Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we've got a couple of things we'd like to get into before the NBA season officially starts on Wednesday for the Orlando Magic. The countdown is officially down to the last 48 hours, but before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic pages here on the YouTube platform. Guys, the NBA season is almost here. We will be breaking down all 82 games of the regular season. So lock in with us as we go on this journey through my first full season covering the Orlando Magic. But for today, let's go ahead and put a bow on some of the preseason conversations leading into Wednesday's opening night game against the Miami Heat. Starting with Colin Castleton, former Florida Gator, was signed to the final Magic two-way spot the other day, saying they reached out to me and told me we're going to sign you. This was on Saturday. Come to practice. And I was like, shoot, I'll be there first thing. So I was super excited. I'm just thankful for everything. Colin Castleton joins Orlando Robinson and Jamal Cain as the two players, as the other two players occupying all three of the two-way spots for the Orlando Magic this upcoming season. It's no coincidence that with the moves they made this offseason, bringing in Tyus Jones, Jace Richardson, and obviously having Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black, and Desmond Bane on the roster, that they are in position now to really bolster their front court with some of their more inexpensive positions like the two-way Exhibit 10, the two-ways in Exhibit 10s. Now the Orlando Magic have their roster pretty much fully fleshed out as much as humanly possible. Going into a season where, of course, they're going to be without Mo Wagner for a significant period of time due to the ACL injury. So there's basically room for Colin Castleton or Orlando Robinson or Jamal Cain all to potentially see some minutes. But nonetheless, the full 15-man roster is fully complete with Colin Castleton getting that last two-way spot. Shout out to him. Not somebody who is going to, light up the stat sheet, but a guy who is a productive, backup center, third productive backup slash like third string center for a team, and a guy who I think is a good locker room presence as part of an Orlando Magic franchise that is just trying to get good basketball players. Next up, let's talk about something I thought was really interesting, which was Bleacher Report recently did a 2025 NBA redraft after the preseason, and our boy Jace Richardson flew up the board. What do I mean? Well, everyone knows that, of course, originally the Orlando Magic were in position where they were in the late 20s draft pick wise in the actual NBA draft. Well, Jace Richardson was a complete snipe in this draft as far as Bleacher Report is concerned after the preseason, because he flew all the way up to being taken 7th overall by the New Orleans Pelicans ahead of Jeremiah Fears, who was the original pick at that 7th spot. It says, if the Pelicans feel Jordan Poole can handle point guard duties until DeJounte Murray returns from a torn Achilles, we could see a change at number 7 here. Jace Richardson falling to number 25 seemed like a mistake at the time and is only looking worse the more we see him in action. Richardson is averaging 11.7 points and 3.3 rebounds in his 21 minutes this preseason and nailing 70% of his three-pointers. Height concerns likely caused him to fall in the draft, but he will end up looking like a top 10 pick. Easily steal of the draft. From 25 to 7. Now, granted, going off a preseason sample size, using preseason hype as a driver to kind of create a narrative around risers and fallers, Jace Richardson was actually one of the only real changes in Bleacher Report's redraft. They did a couple of adjustments here and there, but Jace Richardson was easily the biggest riser of anyone in their redraft, and it goes to show that his three-point shooting and on-ball ability on the Orlando Magic roster just fits so well, but it also shows how valuable his skill set was coming into this NBA draft, where the fact that he even fell to 25 was a surprise, as the Bleacher Report mentioned. Like, this was one of the best shooters in the draft easily, and as they mentioned before as well, that 6'1", 6'2" frame might have been the one thing that deterred people away from drafting him in a league where positional size is really a big game changer in today's league, and more particularly at that point guard position, being able to get the jumbo wing ball handler, your 6'4", 6'5", and up point guard that has the ability to still, put the ball on the floor, make decisions, be physical. Those are now a newly adapted archetype at that point guard position, where just simply being a pure bed scorer is not the only way to see real minutes on the floor at the point guard position. Positional size can add to that in a way that makes you more valuable. Jace didn't have that, but his high level shooting ability is a game changer in comparison to some of the other guards in this draft class. And I think, especially in comparison to somebody like Jeremiah Fears, who is more of your light 'em up combo guard type. Jace Richardson fits right on par with being that caliber of player, if not more efficient than that caliber of player. Shout out to Jace Richardson for earning the kind of respect that he deserved. This was a guy that I thought we would have been lucky to be able to draft in at 25 when I was doing my pre 2025 NBA draft prospects list. When we went through some of those names, Jace Richardson was one of the first names that came up, but he was a guy that I thought would have honestly went a lot higher in the draft, and I thought was going to be considered as a guy that honestly would have gotten a lot more respect for the fact that he could shoot the three ball so well in a league where the three ball is the ability to hit the three at a high clip is so respected. And sometimes that simple skill set by itself translates so well for certain teams that people are willing to take risk on quote unquote specialists. And Jace Richardson is a 3-point quote unquote 3-point specialist with on ball chops, something that differentiates him a lot. So again, shout out to Jace Richardson. For those who are wondering, the player that the Orlando Magic ended up getting in the redraft was Chaz Lanier, who eventually was drafted number 37 overall by the Detroit Pistons. And for that, it says, sorry, Orlando Magic fans, Jace Richardson is just too good of a prospect to fall this far again. This roster still needs shooting ability, though, and Chaz Lanier's strong preseason play proves he should be selected higher than the early second round. Lanier ranked third amongst all rookies this preseason in made threes per game, 2.5, and is making 41% of his looks. For a Magic team that finished dead last in the NBA in three-point accuracy, 31.8%, his floor spacing would be a beautiful fit. So still, they get a knockdown three with the Orlando Magic in the redraft, still get a knockdown three-point shooter, someone who fits more of your traditional 3-and-D guard slash wing archetype, somebody who fits more into your AJ Green, your Duncan Robinson archetype of being a guy who comes in as a knockdown shooter, floor spacer type that just simply addresses the Orlando Magic's three-point shooting issue from last season in ways that Jace Richardson obviously does as well, but Jace gives you a little bit more on-ball juice compared to Chaz Lanier. This is more of drafting a guy who just fits directly with see problem, address problem type of draft versus Jace Richardson was an absolute steal because he was kind of the best of both worlds. He could be legitimately a strong backup point guard, candidate for this team, while also being somebody that can simply come in and play spot minutes as a person who adds real floor spacing to the team. Thought that was a really interesting experiment by Bleacher Report as well, doing a redraft after preseason and still kind of factoring in things like team fit and all of that. So check out that article for sure, because I actually thought it was a really interesting exercise across the board. And again, not too many names. When you actually go through it, not too many names changed. Like the very first name that actually made any real headways in terms of being somewhere different than where they were originally drafted was the Charlotte Hornets just going ahead and taking Ace Bailey, despite during the time a lot of the reason that Ace Bailey wasn't taken by Charlotte had a lot to do with his representation and a lot of the discussions around Ace Bailey kind of inadvertently verbalizing that the Charlotte Hornets was a place he did not want to go. And when you just go from a talent perspective, somewhere like Charlotte looking for blue chip prospects next to LaMelo Ball, next to Brandon Miller, you take a guy like Ace Bailey. Granted, Colin Knueppel should be a really strong pro in this league, but Ace Bailey from a talent perspective and an upside perspective, that's a player that when you know you have at minimum 8 years of real, roster control over, you just take the best guy, right? And I think the same thing can be said for somebody like Jace Richardson. I think when you look forward, I think even as soon as the end of this rookie season for all of them, Jace Richardson, I think, is going to be a more productive and effective rookie than Jeremiah Fears, somebody who was taken nearly a full 20 picks before him. So I think there's a world where Jace Richardson is a top 7 rookie this year. I mean, obviously you have Cooper, you have Ace, you have Conkanipple, you have Trey Johnson with Washington. Those four are very interesting. Obviously Dylan Harper with San Antonio. But once you get past like the five main guys that kind of seem to headline this NBA draft, this latest NBA draft, someone like Jace Richardson would, if given the proper kind of tick on the floor as part of the second unit, if given the real opportunity, I think he is a guy who should have real buzz as a All NBA of second team rookie this upcoming season. So shout out to bro. But I mean, just overall, just an interesting experiment. Bleacher Report also did something where they described every team using one word, and the word they used for the Orlando Magic was revealed. What they said was last summer's Kentavious Caldwell Pope signing failed, and the Orlando Magic proved they were done trying half measures by sending out a half decade's worth of first round assets for Desmond Bane. The former Memphis Grizzlies guard was arguably the best solution for Orlando's problems. His career 41% rate on threes comes with the kind of competent defense head coach Jamal Mosley demands. With Bane aboard and Tyus Jones also joining up to support Jalen Suggs at the point, the Magic should be able to field an offense that ranks somewhere in the middle of the pack. That'd be a huge improvement for a squad that hasn't scored with a league average efficiency since 2011-2012. But what if the changes aren't enough? What if neither Paulo Banchero nor Franz Wagner improve their own below average true shooting percentages with more spacing around them? What if Mosley can't draw up schemes or coax a faster pace of a young roster that should be able to run? This is a crossroads season for Orlando. Major success feels likely, but another poor offensive showing will reveal a lot about the organization's most important figures. I think the word revealed slash revealing is such a strong word for this upcoming team because, again, I've said this all preseason, even dating back to the very beginning of camp. This season is going to be so important for the Orlando Magic because given the state of the Eastern Conference, with the Boston Celtics starting the season without Jason Tatum, with the Indiana Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton this upcoming season, with the questions around Philadelphia 76ers, who already are entering the season with real health concerns because Jared McCain is entering the season without being healthy. Paul George will not be ready for opening night. Joel Embiid is already verbalized that he's not playing back-to-backs, right? So there's questions around that team. The Milwaukee Bucks have questions with whether or not Giannis Antetokounmpo makes it to the trade deadline. Sure, they re-signed Thanasis and they brought in his other brother recently to try to help build the family vibe, to help, strengthen the bond with Giannis going into a year where they don't really look like true contenders out east because their two top players are after Giannis are Miles Turner, who they're basically paying about $50 million to be a stretch big and hopefully return to being back, hopefully return to being, a real elite rim defender. He's a above average rim defender, but for $50 million, essentially, they need him to be like a DPOY level candidate rim protector. And then Kyle Kuzma, right? So there's all these questions around the Eastern Conference, and the Orlando Magic are a team that are basically coming back with the same roster as last season, with improved depth at the point guard position, and addressed the three-point shooting issues, at least from a talent perspective, by bringing in guys who add real three-point efficiency to their roster, which should, in theory, make them a much more efficient offense. Because if you're any better than 31% from beyond the arc as a shooting team last season, you're probably better than 41 and 41, but more particularly, you're also in position to be discussed as one of the top 10 to 15 offenses in the league. Again, as this article mentioned, something that hasn't been done by the Orlando Magic in over a decade. They've been bottom 5 the last 4 seasons. So this is a team that if they even breach middle of the pack, as good as they are defensively as a team, you have to watch out for them. So this is a very important season because with all the questions around the Eastern Conference, if this team doesn't at least get out of the first round this season, what are they supposed to do when the deck starts to stack itself even further? What happens when the Miami Heat or the New York Knicks get Giannis Antetokounmpo in a trade at the trade deadline, or sometime during next season or sometime during the off season this upcoming summer. What happens when Jason Tatum comes back and is with the Boston Celtics, fully revamped in a healthy year where the Celtics look to kind of reestablish their dominance within the Eastern Conference by actually making win now moves again after last summer they made a this past summer they made a bunch of cost cutting moves, moving off of Drew Holiday, moving off of Kristaps Porzingis, letting Al Horford walk. Also, they could open up about, I mean, they freed up about $110 million in salary cap to get below the second apron basically within about a week to 2 weeks. Like once they started doing all of their salary cap machinations, they kind of made everyone realize that this wasn't necessarily a dud year, but this was not a all in. We're still a champ. We're still trying to, we still think we're capable of making a championship run type of move or set of moves this past summer. Regardless of what Jaylen Brown or any of the players on the roster may say, this Boston Celtics team moved this past offseason like, okay, we are in a transitional period where we'll get back to where we're trying to be, but we might need to take a quote unquote gap year to reset our books and reposition ourselves so that in the summer of 2027, in the summer of 2026, we have the chance to re-bolster this roster up with Jason Tatum healthy, still having Derek White on the roster, still having Jaylen Brown on the roster, and go from there. Same thing with Tyrese Halliburton for the Indiana Pacers. If he comes back in 2026, 2027, that next season, and he's healthy with the Indiana Pacers team, who might end up being even more well positioned going into that year, depending on what their draft pick looks like this upcoming season, that's another team that gets better. The Philadelphia 76ers get one more year to figure it out and another year deeper into the Joel Embiid and Paul George situations, which also allows them to potentially become a little bit more flexible as well as some of their other contracts start to expire and fall off. And they retool around George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey, also adding to the fact that, they have VJ Edgecombe and Jared McCain on very respectable frugal deals, given that they're in the early stages of their rookie contracts, right? So all these other teams in the East, they might be in a weird spot right now. They might be in a figure it out stage right now. But next season, there's going to be a lot more clarity across the board. Even if it's not great clarity, it's going to be some level of understanding they don't have this season, because some of the interesting things that factor into why the Eastern Conference is considered so up for grabs this upcoming year. So that's a long-winded way of saying that the Orlando Magic are going to learn a lot about themselves this season, because however good or bad they perform this season will be a reflection of where they could potentially stand when the deck reshuffles, right? If the Orlando Magic can't get out of the first round with the Boston Celtics and Indiana Pacers weekend, what are they going to do when those two teams get back right? If the Orlando Magic can make the conference finals in their very first season with Desmond Bane, what can this team do once they've fully acclimated themselves with a whole nother off season working together and maybe making one or two other moves on the margin, focusing on that center position, and then go out next season and build off it? They could go from making the Eastern Conference Finals to maybe being in the NBA Finals the following season. Like that's such that's how big of a swing those two differences can really be. So going to be an important season, like I said, for the Orlando Magic to figure out who they are. I think revealed was an interesting phrase that Bleacher Report used. Check out that article as well. Not don't work for Bleacher Report or anything like that. So, but these are kind of shameless plugs for articles that I think are very useful in terms of getting an understanding of what the upcoming NBA season is going to look like. And I also think that this, similar to the redraft, was a really interesting exercise, because it's kind of taking this one word approach to getting a better understanding of, I think the way they addressed it was not only like what the team did for themselves going into this upcoming season, but more of a reflection of like one word that summarizes what this upcoming season means for the team itself. And I think they got the Orlando Magic spot on, not gonna lie. Last but not least, something that we're going to be doing here on the channel is I'm going to be doing something called Parlay J on Magic Latest, where basically every single game you are going to get some bit of a three leg. I think I'm going to keep it at three legs. Um, Focusing around the Orlando Magic for every single game that they play. 82 games, and I'm going to put together a three-leg parlay each time that a leg of the parlay hits. That'll be a tally for me. Every leg that doesn't hit will be a tally against. It'll basically be me doing a win-loss record. So let's say that I do a three-part parlay. You're allowed to break it up in any way possible if you want to, or put the parlay straight as is. But let's say that I were to do a three-leg parlay, which was the point spread for Orlando Magic, a over under, I would say, or let's say money line, over under point spread, and then one player performance. Like Orlando Magic, let's lean towards Paulo. It'll always be Apollo Banchero, Franz Wagner. It'll always be somebody on the Orlando Magic though. But let's say it's one of those things where we'll do like the point spread in, for example, we'll use the Orlando Magic's game against the Miami Heat. According to Fox Sports, the pick is the Orlando Magic are favored by 8.5 points in this one. So picking at the point spread, I don't have to necessarily say Magic win, Magic lose, because of course, as an Orlando Magic fan, you're gonna want your team to win every single time. You're gonna bet with your heart. So let's say the Orlando Magic cover the 8.5 point spread. So I'm picking the Orlando Magic to win by at least 9 points in this game. Let's say the over-under pick in this game is over 215.5 points. So that's meaning between the Orlando Magic and the Miami Heat, they will score a combined 216 points at least to hit the over on those picks. And then let's say there's an over-under, or there's a prediction of Paulo Banchero has 35 between points, rebounds, and assists. So he would need, let's say, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. That would be 35 to have at least 35 or more points, rebounds, and assists. That would be a perfect parlay, and I would be 3-0. But let's say Orlando gets 35 points, rebounds, and assists in total from Paulo Banchero, and let's say that the Orlando Magic and the Miami Heat score 216 combined points, but the Magic only win by 3 instead of winning by 10. I will be 2-1. So that's going to be something that we keep real tabs on. I'll try to see if I can create some kind of graphic or something like that after every single game to kind of keep tabs of my record. So that's me prepping you guys for an ongoing series that I think could be really interesting. You guys can drop your comments down in the below, kind of keeping tabs along with your score as well if you want to. I think it'd be an interesting way to kind of invest yourself in the season even further than just following your favorite team, because who doesn't love a little sports betting here and there. And it again gives you another real incentive to tune in every single episode to get my parlay prep of the night, because every single time the Orlando Magic play, I'll have a 3-leg parlay for you. So that's just an example. On the actual day of the Orlando Magic versus Miami game being Wednesday, I will share my actual parlay prep. Again, it will be me using the point spread, the over under in terms of the points scored, and I will probably pick one player on the team, and it'll be some kind of higher, lower, something of that nature. And for reference, I will say this again on Wednesday. For reference, all of my parlays will be quote unquote powered by FanDuel. So all of the parlays I will be using will be parlays that, or will be using legs that are generated from the FanDuel app. So if you want to follow along, that would be the app that you use probably to put it together. But that's all something that will get addressed on Wednesday for the very first NBA game of the season for the Orlando Magic. But we still got a little bit of time before then. But with that all being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We are officially staring at the start of the NBA season, so please hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new episodes. And until tomorrow, I will see you guys later. Peace.